The day of Lauren and Adam's wedding dawned with a crisp blue sky, the kind of perfect weather brides dream of for their big day. The sun bathed the estate in a golden glow, and the air carried the faint scent of roses from the meticulously arranged floral displays that adorned every corner of the sprawling venue. The estate itself was a grand, historic mansion, complete with towering columns and an expansive lawn dotted with white wooden chairs arranged in perfect rows facing the ornate gazebo where the ceremony would take place. Guests arrived in waves, dressed in elegant attire, their laughter and chatter creating a soft, pleasant hum that floated through the air. Inside the bridal suite, Lauren sat in front of a gilded mirror, her reflection almost unrecognizable beneath the layers of expertly applied makeup and the cascading waves of dark curls that framed her face. The delicate lace bodice of her ivory gown clung to her figure, and her veil shimmered with subtle beadwork that caught the sunlight streaming through the window. Emily stood behind her sister, watching as the makeup artist applied the final touches to Lauren's smoky eyeshadow. Emily's own reflection appeared beside her sister's, a stark contrast with her understated makeup and simple, pale blue bridesmaid dress. Despite the cheerful atmosphere, Emily couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that had been gnawing at her for days. She tried to focus on the details, the delicate pearl earrings Lauren wore, the intricate lacework on her veil, but her mind kept circling back to that fateful night 6 months ago, the night she caught Lauren at the cafe with that man. She could still picture them clearly. Lauren and the stranger sitting in a dimly lit corner booth, leaning in close, their hands entwined as if they were the only two people in the world. Emily had been on her way to meet a friend for drinks when she spotted them. At first, she thought she was mistaken. Maybe it wasn't Lauren. Maybe it was just someone who looked like her. But as she stepped closer, her heart pounding, she saw her sister's unmistakable profile and the way she smiled at the man. A smile Emily had never seen her give to Adam. Emily's stomach churned as she forced herself to smile at Lauren's reflection, trying to mask the turmoil beneath the surface. Lauren caught her sister's gaze in the mirror and smiled, a dazzling, almost too perfect smile. "What do you think?" she asked, her voice bright and bubbly. "Do I look like a bride?" Emily swallowed, nodding. "You look beautiful," she said, her voice strained. Lauren beamed, oblivious to her sister's discomfort, and turned to the hairstylist, who was adjusting the delicate floral pins that held her veil in place. "I still can't believe this is happening," Lauren said with a dreamy sigh. After all the planning, the stress, the late-night arguments over the seating chart, it's finally here. Emily forced another smile, her fingers digging into the soft fabric of her dress. "Yeah," she said softly. "It's finally here." Outside, the guests continued to gather, their laughter and excited chatter drifting through the open windows. Adam stood near the gazebo, talking to his groomsmen, his expression relaxed and happy. He looked handsome in his tailored black tuxedo, his dark hair neatly combed back, and his green eyes sparkling with the kind of joy that only comes once in a lifetime. Emily's gaze lingered on him for a moment, a pang of guilt twisting in her gut. Adam had always been kind to her, treating her like a sister from the moment he and Lauren started dating. He would call her just to check in, bring her coffee when he knew she had a long shift at work, and even helped her move into her new apartment last year without being asked. He was a genuinely good man, the kind of man who deserved to know the truth. But what good would it do to tell him now, on his wedding day? As the bridal suite filled with bridesmaids adjusting their dresses, photographers snapping candid shots, and makeup artists scurrying around with brushes and powder compacts, Emily felt the walls closing in on her. The air was too thick, the voices too loud, and Lauren's laughter echoed in her ears like a haunting refrain. Emily excused herself, slipping out of the room and into the hallway, where she leaned against the cool wall and took a deep, shuddering breath. Her chest tightened as the memory of that night in the cafe resurfaced. The way Lauren's face had fallen when she realized Emily had seen them, the desperate apologies that spilled from her lips as she begged Emily to keep it a secret. "It was a mistake," Lauren had said, her voice breaking. "I swear it's over. I got scared." Adam is so perfect, and I started feeling trapped. But it meant nothing, Em. Please, you have to believe me. Please don't say anything. Emily had agreed, reluctantly, but the secret had weighed on her ever since. A heavy stone lodged in her chest that refused to dislodge no matter how hard she tried to push it down. Now, as she stood alone in the hallway, the sound of wedding music drifting through the open windows, she felt that stone pressing harder than ever. Back in the bridal suite, Lauren's laughter rang out, and Emily's jaw clenched. She knew she needed to pull herself together. This was Lauren's day. This was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. But as Emily re-entered the room, forcing another smile, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to go horribly wrong. And deep down, she knew that she would be the one to make it happen. The reception hall was a dazzling spectacle of golden lights, towering floral arrangements, and gleaming champagne glasses. The guests had settled into their seats, the air buzzing with laughter and chatter as servers moved swiftly between tables, balancing trays of hors d'oeuvres and sparkling wine. The newlyweds, Lauren and Adam, sat at the center of it all, their table adorned with a lush cascade of white roses and ivy. Lauren's smile was radiant, her hand entwined with Adam's as they listened to toasts from family and friends. Her cheeks were flushed from champagne and the glow of being the center of attention, her laugh ringing out like silver bells. Emily sat a few seats away, her gaze fixed on her sister. Lauren looked so blissfully unaware, so perfectly content. And Adam, his eyes shone with adoration every time he looked at his new wife. It should have been a beautiful, heartwarming sight. But for Emily, it was a bitter reminder of what she knew, of what Lauren had hidden from everyone, including the man sitting beside her. Emily's fingers tightened around the stem of her wine glass, her knuckles white. The secret pulsed beneath her skin, a restless, throbbing thing that refused to be silenced. She had tried to push it down all day, tried to lose herself in the music and the endless glasses of champagne, but the memory of that night in the cafe kept replaying in her mind like a haunting refrain. 6 months ago, the dimly lit cafe with its flickering candlelight and soft jazz music. Lauren sitting across from a man Emily had never seen before, their fingers entwined across the table, their faces close as they spoke in hushed tones. Emily had stood frozen in the doorway, the world tilting around her. Lauren's smile was the kind of smile she used to reserve for Adam, the soft, intimate kind that spoke of shared secrets and unspoken promises. But it wasn't Adam she was smiling at. Emily had watched in disbelief as Lauren leaned closer, her fingers tracing circles on the man's hand. And then he leaned in, capturing her lips in a kiss so tender, so unhurried. It was as if they were the only two people in the world. Emily had stumbled backward, her heart hammering against her ribs, nausea churning in her gut. She hadn't meant to confront Lauren, hadn't meant to make a scene. But when Lauren had looked up and seen her standing there, eyes wide and face pale, the color drained from her sister's face. "Emily," Lauren had said, her voice trembling, her hand pulling away from the man's as if she'd been burned. This isn't what it looks like." But it had been exactly what it looked like. And the man? He had just stared at Emily with a mixture of annoyance and boredom, as if she were nothing more than an inconvenient interruption. "Who the hell is she?" he had asked, his voice cold and dismissive. Lauren had tried to explain, her words tumbling over one another in a frantic rush. "Emily, please, just let me explain. It was a mistake. I was feeling overwhelmed. Adam he's so perfect, and I panicked." Emily had said nothing. She had turned and walked away, her legs shaky, her vision blurring with tears. That night, Lauren had come to her apartment, pounding on the door until Emily let her in. She had cried and begged for forgiveness, swearing it was a moment of weakness, a lapse in judgment. "It's over," she had said, clutching Emily's hands, her eyes red and puffy. "It meant nothing. Please don't say anything. If Adam finds out, it will ruin everything. He'll leave me, and I can't lose him. Please, Emily, you have to keep this between us." And Emily had agreed. Reluctantly, painfully, but she had agreed. Now, 6 months later, Emily watched her sister laugh and smile as if nothing had happened, as if she were the perfect, blushing bride who had never betrayed her husband. The band played a slow, romantic tune, and the guests swayed in their seats, a few couples moving to the dance floor to twirl under the twinkling lights. Adam leaned over and kissed Lauren's cheek, and Lauren beamed, her eyes sparkling. Emily took another long, deep sip of her champagne, the bubbles burning down her throat. It wasn't fair. It wasn't right. Adam deserved to know, but it was Lauren's wedding day. The day she had dreamed about since she was a little girl. The day she had planned for months with meticulous care. The DJ's voice crackled through the speakers, announcing the toasts. One by one, the speakers rose to deliver their tributes. Lauren's college friend shared a light-hearted story about late-night study sessions and sorority pranks. Adam's best man recounted the night Adam met Lauren, how he couldn't stop talking about her for hours, how he'd called her the one before they'd even had a first date. Laughter echoed through the hall, and Adam smiled sheepishly, his cheeks flushed. Emily's heart pounded against her chest as her turn drew closer. She could feel the weight of her glass in her hand, the room spinning ever so slightly as the alcohol coursed through her veins. The DJ announced Emily's name, and she felt every eye in the room turn to her. Slowly, she rose to her feet, her legs shaky beneath her. She cleared her throat, forcing a tight smile as she lifted her glass. "For those who don't know me, I'm Emily, Lauren's older sister," she said, her voice strained but steady. "I've known Lauren my whole life. I was there when she scraped her knee, falling off her bike, when she brought home her first report card with straight A's, when she got her heart broken for the first time in high school. And I was there the night she met Adam." Emily's gaze flicked to Adam, who was smiling up at her, his eyes warm and trusting. She felt her heart crack. "Lauren told me that night that she'd found the man she was going to marry," Emily continued, her throat tightening. "She said he was everything she'd ever dreamed of. Kind, loyal, honest. Someone who would never hurt her." Lauren's smile faltered, her eyes narrowing slightly as she watched Emily. The room was silent now, the air thick with anticipation. Emily swallowed hard, her pulse thundering in her ears. She could feel the words pressing against her tongue, desperate to escape. And that's why she said, her voice breaking, "That's why it hurts me to say that. There's something Adam deserves to know." Gasps echoed through the room, and Emily could see the confusion on Adam's face, the sudden tension in Lauren's jaw. "Lauren," Emily said, her eyes burning, "6 months ago I saw you. I saw you with another man." The room fell deathly silent. Lauren's face drained of all color, her eyes widening in shock and horror. Adam's expression shifted from confusion to disbelief, his gaze darting between his wife and Emily. The guests began to murmur, their whispers a growing tide of tension and speculation. "I didn't want to say anything," Emily continued, her voice trembling. "But I can't sit here and pretend that everything is perfect when it isn't. Adam deserves to know the truth. And I can't keep lying for you anymore, Lauren." Lauren shot to her feet, her eyes blazing with fury. "How could you?" she hissed, her fists clenched at her sides. "How dare you do this to me?" Adam's jaw clenched, his eyes darkening as he looked at Lauren, a storm brewing behind his gaze. "Is it true?" he asked, his voice low and dangerous. "Lauren, is it true?" Lauren opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. The room was a minefield of shocked faces and stricken expressions. And Emily stood there, frozen in place, her heart pounding as the weight of her words settled over the room like a dark, suffocating cloud. There was no going back now. The secret was out, and the destruction had only just begun. The room remained frozen in silence, every guest staring at Lauren, their expressions a mixture of shock, confusion, and anticipation. Adam stood motionless, his eyes fixed on his wife, the woman he had just vowed to love and cherish for the rest of his life. His jaw was clenched tight, and his fists trembled at his sides as he awaited Lauren's response. Emily remained rooted to her spot, her champagne glass still clutched in her hand, her knuckles white. The world around her felt surreal, as if the walls were closing in, the air growing thick and heavy. Lauren's face had lost all color, her skin ashen beneath the soft glow of the chandelier. Her eyes darted around the room, searching for an escape, for a way to undo the words her sister had just unleashed. But there was no going back now. The secret was out, and the consequences were cascading down upon her like an avalanche. Adam's eyes darkened, his brows knitting together as he took a slow, deliberate step forward. "Lauren," he said, his voice dangerously low. "Is it true? Did you cheat on me?" The words hung in the air like a blade poised to strike, and Lauren flinched as though the question had physically wounded her. Lauren's gaze flicked to Emily, and for a brief, fleeting moment, her eyes burned with a mix of betrayal and desperation. Emily couldn't look away. This was the moment she had dreaded, the moment she had known was coming ever since she let the words spill out. But there was no undoing it now. The truth had been spoken, and all she could do was watch as the world she knew crumbled around her. "Adam." "Oh." Lauren's voice was barely a whisper, and her eyes glistened with unshed tears. "It was a mistake. It was a terrible, stupid mistake." Gasps echoed through the room, and the guests began to murmur, some leaning toward each other to whisper in hushed tones. Adam's jaw tightened, his nostrils flaring as he struggled to contain the storm of emotions raging inside him. "A mistake?" he repeated, his voice shaking. "You cheated on me, and it was just a mistake?" Lauren took a step forward, reaching for his hand, but he recoiled as if her touch might burn him. "Adam, please," she said, her voice breaking. "It didn't mean anything. It was a moment of weakness, and it's over. It's been over for months." "Months?" Adam's eyes widened, and he took another step back, his back hitting the edge of the table. "So it wasn't just one time? You've been lying to me for months?" Lauren opened her mouth to respond, but the words caught in her throat. Tears spilled down her cheeks, and she brought a trembling hand to her mouth. "I didn't want to hurt you," she choked out, her voice cracking. "I love you, Adam. I love you so much." Adam shook his head, his expression hardening. "You love me?" he said, a bitter laugh escaping his lips. "You love me, but you were with someone else? Do you have any idea how that makes me feel? How humiliated I feel right now, in front of everyone." He gestured to the crowd, and Lauren glanced around, her shoulders slumping as she took in the sea of stunned faces. Emily watched as her sister crumbled, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Part of her wanted to rush forward, to hold Lauren, to comfort her the way she always had. But another part of her knew that she was the one who had started this chain reaction, the one who had ripped the veil of illusion from the perfect day and exposed the ugly truth beneath. "You knew about this?" Adam said suddenly, turning to Emily, his eyes blazing. "You knew, and you didn't say anything?" Emily's heart clenched, and she swallowed the lump in her throat. "Yes," she said, her voice small and weak. "I knew. Lauren told me after it happened. She begged me not to say anything." Adam's face contorted in anger, and his fists clenched at his sides. "So you both lied to me," he said, his voice dripping with venom. "My wife and my sister-in-law. What a perfect little family we are." The bitterness in his voice was palpable, and Emily flinched, her eyes filling with tears. "I'm so sorry, Adam," she said, her voice breaking. I thought it was over. I thought she had ended it, and I didn't want to ruin your wedding day." "Well, you did," Adam snapped, his eyes flashing with fury. "You ruined everything." Lauren sank into a nearby chair, burying her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking with sobs. Adam stared down at her, his chest heaving with each ragged breath. "Who is it?" he demanded, his voice cold and sharp. "Who was the other man?" Lauren's sobs grew louder, but she said nothing. Adam's jaw tightened, and he grabbed a nearby glass, hurling it against the wall with a force that sent shards of glass scattering across the floor. The guests gasped, some shrinking back in their seats, others exchanging anxious glances. "I asked you a question, Lauren," Adam shouted, his voice echoing through the hall. "Who was he?" Lauren's sobs subsided, and she lifted her tear-streaked face, her eyes red and swollen. "It was Tom," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Tom?" Adam repeated, his eyes narrowing. Tom from your office? Tom, the guy you introduced me to at the Christmas party? Lauren nodded, her face crumpling as another sob escaped her lips. It was only a few times, she said, her voice shaking. It didn't mean anything. I swear it didn't mean anything. Adam let out a harsh, bitter laugh, running a hand through his hair as he paced the floor. It didn't mean anything, he muttered to himself, his eyes wild. My wife slept with another man, and it didn't mean anything. Emily's heart ached as she watched the man she once considered a brother unravel before her eyes. Adam's pain was palpable, his shoulders slumped, his fists clenched as if he were holding himself together by sheer willpower alone. You destroyed me, he said, his voice breaking. You destroyed everything. Lauren rose from the chair, reaching for him, but he stepped back, his eyes cold and distant. Don't touch me, he said, his voice hollow. Don't ever touch me again. Lauren's face crumpled, and she sank back into the chair, her sobs echoing through the room. Adam turned on his heel and stormed out of the reception hall, his footsteps echoing against the marble floor. The guests remained seated, their faces pale and stunned, the air thick with the tension of a celebration turned nightmare. Emily stood frozen in place, her chest heaving, her heart pounding as the weight of what she had done crashed over her like a tidal wave. She had exposed the truth, but the cost was far greater than she had ever anticipated. The wedding was ruined, Adam was gone, and Lauren was shattered. And in that moment, as she watched her sister sobbing in her hands, Emily felt as though she had not only betrayed her sister, but herself as well. The fallout had only just begun. The room remained in stunned silence long after Adam stormed out, the echo of the glass shattering still hanging in the air. The guests sat frozen in their seats, exchanging anxious, wide-eyed glances. The once joyful atmosphere was now thick with the heavy weight of secrets exposed and relationships torn apart. Lauren remained slumped in her chair, her face buried in her hands, her body racked with silent sobs. The sound of her anguish was a hollow, wrenching thing, a sound that echoed through the cavernous hall and gnawed at Emily's already frayed nerves. Emily couldn't move. Her legs felt rooted to the floor, her hands trembling at her sides as she watched her sister fall apart before her eyes. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. She had convinced herself that telling the truth would set things right, that bringing everything into the open would somehow bring clarity and healing. But now, standing amidst the wreckage of her sister's wedding day, Emily felt as though she had torn everything apart with her bare hands. The guests began to murmur, their whispers growing louder as they exchanged glances and shook their heads. Some rose from their seats, awkwardly making their way toward the exit, avoiding eye contact as they passed by the sobbing bride. Lauren's maid of honor, Claire, approached Emily, her face pale and tight with barely contained fury. What the hell is wrong with you? She hissed, grabbing Emily's arm and pulling her aside. Why would you do that to your own sister? On her wedding day, Emily swallowed, her throat dry and tight. She was lying to him, she said, her voice shaking. Adam deserved to know the truth. And you thought this was the right time? Claire snapped, her grip tightening. You could have told him privately. You didn't have to ruin her entire wedding in front of everyone. I didn't plan to, Emily whispered, her eyes burning with unshed tears. It just came out. Claire shook her head in disgust and released Emily's arm, her eyes hard and cold. You've destroyed her, she said, her voice low. You've destroyed everything. Emily watched as Claire stormed away, her words echoing in her mind like a relentless drumbeat. You've destroyed everything. Emily felt the room spinning, the walls closing in, the weight of the consequences pressing down on her like a crushing wave. She needed to get out. She needed air. Without another word, Emily turned and fled the hall, her heels clicking against the marble floor as she pushed through the heavy doors and stumbled out into the courtyard. The night air was cool against her flushed skin, and Emily drew in a shuddering breath, her chest heaving as she tried to steady herself. The estate's gardens stretched out before her, the perfectly manicured hedges and twinkling fairy lights a cruel contrast to the chaos she had just unleashed inside. She wandered toward the edge of the lawn, her mind reeling, her heart pounding. What had she done? Emily sank onto a stone bench beneath a towering oak tree, her hands trembling as she buried her face in them. Tears burned behind her eyes, but she forced them back, her jaw clenched tight. She couldn't cry. Not now. Not after what she had just done. Emily. The voice was soft, tentative, and Emily's heart lurched painfully in her chest. She looked up to see Lauren standing a few feet away, her ivory gown dragging against the grass, the hem stained with dirt. Her makeup was smudged, her eyes red and swollen from crying. She looked like a ghost of the radiant bride she had been only hours earlier. Lauren, Emily said, her voice cracking. I'm so sorry. I never meant for it to come out that way. You ruined everything, Lauren said, her voice trembling as she wrapped her arms around herself. You humiliated me in front of everyone. You humiliated Adam. You destroyed my wedding day. Why, Emily? Why would you do that? Emily rose from the bench, her eyes brimming with tears. Because you were lying to him, she said, her voice breaking. You were lying to the man you just promised to spend the rest of your life with. You were lying to everyone. How could you stand up there and vow to love and honor him while you were hiding something like that? Lauren's eyes flashed with anger, her fists clenched at her sides. You had no right, she said, her voice rising. That was my secret to tell, not yours. You don't know what I was going through. You don't know how scared I was. I didn't mean to hurt Adam. I was scared, okay? I thought he was too good for me. I thought he'd leave me eventually, so I sabotaged it before he could. But you didn't sabotage it, Emily said, her voice growing stronger. You lied. You pretended everything was perfect while you were sneaking around behind his back. And I kept that secret for you, Lauren. For 6 months, I kept it for you, and it was eating me alive. I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't sit there and watch you lie to him. I couldn't watch you pretend. Lauren's shoulders slumped, her expression crumpling as tears spilled down her cheeks. But why today? She whispered, her voice barely audible. Why did you have to do it today? Emily swallowed the lump in her throat, her chest aching. Because I was drunk, she admitted, her voice raw. Because I was angry. Because I thought if I told the truth, it would somehow fix things. But I was wrong, Lauren. I was so wrong. Lauren stared at her for a long, agonizing moment, her eyes searching Emily's face as if looking for some sign of the sister she used to know. Then, without another word, she turned and walked away, her gown trailing through the grass like a ghostly apparition. Emily sank back on a bench, her head falling into her hands as the first sob broke free from her chest. She had lost her sister. She had lost everything. Hours passed. The guests had long since gone. The lights inside the hall dimmed to a soft, melancholy glow. Emily remained outside, her body numb, her eyes dry and stinging. The night air was cold, and she shivered, wrapping her arms around herself as she gazed up at the stars. A car door slammed, and Emily looked up to see Adam walking across the lawn, his tie undone, his hair disheveled. He spotted her, and for a moment their eyes met. Emily's breath caught in her throat. He approached her slowly, his hands shoved deep into his pockets, his expression unreadable. Are you okay? Emily asked, her voice small and uncertain. Adam let out a bitter laugh, shaking his head. Am I okay? He repeated, his eyes hard. No, Emily, I'm not okay. My wife cheated on me. My sister-in-law kept it a secret. And my wedding day is officially the worst day of my life. So no, I'm not okay. Emily flinched, her heart breaking as she watched him struggle to hold himself together. I'm so sorry, she whispered, her voice cracking. I thought I was doing the right thing. Did you? Adam asked, his eyes boring into hers. Or were you just trying to hurt her? To punish her for what she did? Emily opened her mouth to respond, but no words came. The truth was, she didn't know why she had done it. Maybe it was a mixture of anger, guilt, and too much champagne. Maybe it was her own pain bleeding into everyone else's. Adam shook his head, his jaw clenched. You know what? It doesn't matter, he said, his voice cold and final. What's done is done. You got your truth, Emily. But at what cost? With that, he turned and walked away, his silhouette disappearing into the darkness, leaving Emily alone in the cold, empty night. And as she sat there, shivering and alone, Emily finally allowed herself to cry, the tears spilling freely as the weight of what she had done crushed her beneath its relentless force. There was no going back. There was only the wreckage she had left behind and the hollow ache of everything she had lost.